This is Caroline from Caroline's Adventure. We all face challenges in our lives. How do some people take those challenges and turn them into powerful results? Join me as we dig into a story on resilience, hope, and joy, and uncover lessons we can each use in our own lives. But before we start, please take a moment to show that 5-star rating button some love, and follow while you're there to be updated every time I release a new episode. Now, before we begin, a word of caution. On this podcast, we regularly discuss topics like sexual assault, suicide, and addiction, which may be disturbing to some. Please take care as you listen. And if you need support in the United States, reach out to the crisis text line at 741-741. All right. So today we are here with Kira Shishkin, and Kira's got a really interesting story. One of the things that I love is how you've taken the challenges in your life and you've had 4 successful businesses that you've launched from that. And honestly, that's quite a testament, because one business that you've launched, you could say, you know what? I had a fluke. I know, because I'm a serial entrepreneur. The first one that you do, you're like, wow, that was a lucky hit. The second one that you do, you're like, wow, oh crap. Sorry about that. My son does competitive BJJ, and he usually has to leave right now to go to practice, but he's in Austin. Sorry about that.
No worries.
When you've done it over and over again, it's clear that you've learned a system that works well and you can repeat it. That's the kind of story that I love hearing, because in any business that you launch, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be places where you stub your toe, and the ability to continue through with that and see the process through is always amazing to me. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, it'll be an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. Happy to go as deep or as shallow as you suggest. I'll give you the long story short, and then we can dive into the short story long. I am Ukrainian-Israeli-American immigrant and serial entrepreneur. I've built a couple of projects and businesses that have given my life a lot of meaning. I was born and raised in Ukraine, in Kiev. And then I came of age in Israel, spent almost a decade there, and became a young adult in Israel. And then I came to the United States, and for over a decade here now, I've been in New York, in Chicago, in San Francisco, in LA. Throughout my whole life, I probably have these 2 big principles, which is how can I set up myself for maximum growth and learning? And the second one is how can I be as helpful as possible to other people? And across these 2 simple principles, they both guide me as to what I do and when I transition to doing whatever I'm doing next, when I know to switch what I'm doing. I built 3 businesses before Informed.now across book publishing, crypto infrastructure, fintech marketplace. With Informed.now, this one feels most aligned to my own personal story and chip on my shoulder, giving the power of facts to everyday people. Informed.now is a news research company on a mission to make factual news accessible and make news readership worthwhile again for people.
It's interesting. You know when to move on when it stops being a fit for you. What are those signs to you? What is it that you look for where you're like, yep, this is cool, but I'm done here?
Yeah, some things you don't necessarily have to give up or break up with. Some things can take a more of a background role in your life. But for me, it comes down to that first principle, which is how can I make sure that I'm growing person as a professional, as a craftsperson, as a human, as a partner, as a family member, as a friend, as quickly and as much as possible. And whenever I feel like my growth is starting to plateau in a project, in any kind of environment, that's when I feel, and this is personal to me. Some people optimize their own different things. I am in a stage of my life where I love optimizing for growth. When I feel like my growth is plateauing, that's when I'm starting to feel like I'm looking for greener pastures where my learning curve continues to be steep. I'm always looking to keep steepening my learning curve.
And that's where life is the most fun. People make fun of me because I am very comfortable being outside of my comfort zone. And I am at my happiest when I'm at that place where I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I'm doing my best to keep my feet on the ground and keep moving forward. And things feel like they're moving a little bit too fast. but it's that excitement level where I'm learning like crazy and just barely keeping on top of it. I love that place. I always say that it feels like I'm in the flow where I can feel the energy flow through me. I can feel the creativity move. I love being in that place.
100%. And I feel like that state of flow is precious and what we always want to access and find a journey to. And I think for me, the accessing of the flow state comes through learning and growing and being in that peak learning and growing state. That's when I feel the flow state for me personally.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun. I find that I am the most successful when I'm able to tap into those spaces. I find that a lot of times I hit flow state after the point where a reasonable person would have quit. When I've hit that point where somebody with any sense in their head would be like, yeah, you know what, this isn't happening. I'm going to give up. And I keep going. I find that's the place where I usually hit the flow.
Yeah.
So you have a pretty interesting background. How do you think that ties into your drive and your determination?
My background is international, where I've had a chance to see different problems, seeing the same problems repeat across different geographies. And it folds into what I'm doing now a lot because I've seen the problem of what I call misinformation overload unfold in Ukraine, in Israel, across America. And so that's really informed my current life's work. Like right now, I feel like I'm doing my life's work. And that might change and evolve, but right now it's definitely it. Like this project, Informed.now, of putting facts in the palm of everyday people, feels like it's honoring the two sides of my story. One being the international thing, like observing the same thing across different geographies. And the second was probably around my personal story. There was a moment in my life when I was a teenager where I had to reinvent myself because I woke up after a car accident, no memories and general amnesia. And there's a very powerful pivot moment in my life where I had to rethink a lot of things and rebuild a lot of memory slash ability to focus. And what I'm doing with Informed now today, which is bread and butter soul focus, is honoring also that kid and his story, somebody who struggled to orient in a landscape. And now we have a news ecosystem that purposely disorients you. I'm hoping to honor both with creating a solution aimed around clarity and signal versus disorientation.
I also had an accident back in 2012 and lost not all my memories, but chunks of my memory. It's a scary place to be in because for me, you know yourself and you know your brain and you know how you function. And when you have a traumatic brain injury, it makes your head a place that you no longer recognize.
Mm,
And it was what got me on social media because my presence on social media started as a online scrapbook in case it ever happened again. I could go back and have a cookie trail to
mhm.
to recreate my life from. And so it was interesting when I was reading your intake form. It's not often that I come across people that have been on a similar path and seeing the impact that it has on your scope of the world. Because for me, it took my life from a very set path. I went on a completely different trajectory and it made me more focused on being authentic to myself and pursuing the things that set me on fire as opposed to doing the things that were expected of me. And it sounds like it had a similar effect on you, where it sounds like it got you more in touch with who you genuinely are and the things that really matter to you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that definitely resonates. When you have, like, we all know theoretically that we don't have a lot of time on this earth. Everything is not to be taken for granted. But I think when you are somebody like you and me, right? When we go through an experience where everything can be taken away from you, like randomly any moment, and you have lived that state,
Yeah.
it adds the sense of urgency to everything that you do. And for me, it's been a layer of like, how do I make the most of my time and how do
Yeah.
I help people and how do I prevent anyone else from suffering the same state that I've been in? So for me, my BTI has been a brain injury, right? And it's caused general amnesia and losing of most of my memories to date. But it's also for multiple years prevented me to be able to remember short-term things, wow, which means I couldn't learn and I couldn't understand things, and it kept me in this very limited state. It was difficult. In some ways, it continues to be difficult, throughout
Yeah,
the years. But I think it's given me a sense of purpose or a sense of urgency to the purpose that certainly is a big guiding force in my life.
absolutely. I had a hard time maintaining conversations for the first few years afterwards because that cohesion of thought that a conversation follows, I couldn't keep on top of. And so that flow back and forth, I would lose the train of thought. I would lose the ability. People would ask me a question, and halfway through, I'd be like, shit, they're looking at me, and I know that I need to give something here, and I have no idea what it is that this person needs from me. Then I would get embarrassed. I still have a really hard time with time maintenance. And so I will schedule things and I will set a lot. You heard my son's alarm go off for his class. I live by those because without alarms, I usually have to do multiple. This is the time to get ready. This is the time to get in the car. This is the time to go. Otherwise, I show up at places at weird times. I miss track of things. You're absolutely right that it showed me how tenuous our grasp on life is. And the grasp that we have on this current life. After my accident, I kept thinking, okay, if I work hard enough, if I push hard enough, I just want to get back to the life I had beforehand. I just want to get back to where my body works correctly. I just want to get
Yeah.
back to where I can walk. I just want to get back to this, this, this. It wasn't until I finally realized that I'm never going to go back to the person. No matter how hard I push, I will never make it back to that person. And the only thing I can do is be the best version of me going forward with what I've got, with the physical capability I've got here and now, with the brain that I have here and now. And that was for me a heartbreaking realization, but an incredibly valuable one because it was the point zero from which I moved forward. Did you have a moment like that where you were like, this is what it is?
Gosh, like I think I've been in defiance post that accident for so long
Yeah.
that I've just rewritten, like in that process, I've been in defiance for so many years that I feel like I've just rewritten everything about myself. For me, I was really young when this happened. I was like 13. For years following that, I had a memory of what it was like to be normal, but I had no access to the capabilities that would come with being normal. One of the most disorienting things about, and I'm not sure it answers your question directly. I'm not even sure I have a direct answer to your question, but one of the things that was really difficult that now looking back, my recovery felt or seems inevitable. But at the time, people around me didn't believe in my recovery. And they didn't really
Yep.
think that I could climb out of this hole that I found myself in. And there's also been so much changes in my social environment because we moved countries when that
Mm-hmm.
happened, that it was super disorienting. And so for years, I was trying to piece thoughts together, trying to learn, trying to have conversations. We're far from cohesive. I was doing that for all this long time, and there was no timeline or certainty of when things are going to be okay again.
Yeah.
And so in that process, I think I was yearning to come back to my previous faculties of being fully physically able, being fully mentally unimpaired in any way, but it just wasn't coming for years, right? It was just like the struggle that had no fruit. And then over time, like reality did kind of yield to me a little bit, where I felt like I have not gone back to the same person, but gone back to like an evolved version of that person. But I've gotten my faculties back. And that felt like a big redemption point. So yeah, by that age, I was like 15, 16, 17, like 3, 4 years following the accident. I was feeling like I've gotten everything I lost back and more in the process of yearning for it.
I would agree. For me, there was a specific catalyst that happened, and it was the year after my accident. I went to San Francisco. It was one of those things where I was at a really low point. They told me that I'd never be able to walk correctly again. And I had relearned how to walk, but I was walking with a cane. And I was like, I'm not going to take a cane with me to San Francisco. That's stupid. I'll be fine. I vastly overestimated my capability, and I forgot how hilly and rough the streets are in San Francisco. So I fell everywhere, and people would rush over. It was mortifying. So I had this trip in the city that I loved, but I was so bruised. My ego was really damaged and I was really low. This trip had spent a week in San Francisco and I just kept going lower and lower. I went to Alcatraz and I remember walking up the hill to Alcatraz and I slept twice. And I was like, this is awful. Is this the rest of my life? Like, am I always going to be this person where people think I'm drunk or impaired because I'm tripping over myself everywhere I go and my speech is off? And like, is this all I've got? And I get to the airport, standing at the gate, and there's this huge boom. It shakes the entire building at San Francisco Airport. At the time, I thought it was a bomb. People are running, the workers are running, nobody knows what's going on. It was Asiana Air, I never remember the number, but I think it was 214, had crashed on the tarmac on landing. For me, that was a moment where I realized there are people on the tarmac dying in front of me. And here I am 50, 60 feet away, and I've got a life. I have it in me to do whatever I want to with this life. And it's not going to be easy. People are going to tell me I can't do this. But I have two choices. I either continue along the path that I'm on, feeling broken and defeated and miserable, feeling sorry for myself for everything I've lost. Or I can say, okay, let's take stock of where we are. What do I have? Where can I go from here? And what can I do with the best that I've got? And I came home. I made major changes in my relationships. I made major changes in my life. I lost two of my closest friends because they were like, you're making unwise choices. And I'm like, I'm making choices that are the most real for my life. I'm letting go of things that no longer serve me. That was the catalyst for everything going forward, because once you accept that this is what it is and that the only thing holding you back is you, no one else can tell you what you're capable of. No one else can tell you what you're going to do with it or how you're going to evolve. And the only thing that's holding you back is you. And that was for me, as you said, I feel like I'm so much further ahead than I was when I had the accident. It's amazing.
And I love the framing that you use around, like, if you do nothing, you'll just be left with the same cards you've been dealt. But if you try to do something, if you try to be aspirational towards this next version of yourself, whether it's recovery or getting back to the person that you were, or just trying to improve your situation, the worst thing that can happen is you'll just have the same situation as you're with right now. Like, there's nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And I think, it's funny, most of the people that I know who have overcome their circumstances all have this strong resilience that I think you and I share as well, of like, right, my only option is to move forward and my only option is to recover. And I don't know a single person who has had this perspective and has not succeeded in their recovery in some capacity.
That's why I have this show, because it's something that I'm fascinated by. The people that I know that are the most successful, without fail, have overcome some major obstacle. And it's not that they've had a clear path from them to success. We know of instances in society where people have been given a gilded path, but the vast majority of self-made successful people have come through some major challenge and turned it around in a meaningful way and said, you know what, no, that doesn't define me. It's a challenge, but I'm going to take it and do something else with it. That's a great point.
Yeah, the challenge to redefine yourself and to reinvent yourself. What a privilege.
One of the things that I always like to ask is, what do you think is the thing that's led to your resilience? What is it that makes you so good at seeing the process through and turning it into success?
Yeah, I think this core experience that I've had solidified the resilience in me, but it was also the example that I was taking from the rest of my family, because this car accident that I was referencing was something that me, my mother, and my sister were in together. And seeing their recovery, especially my mother's, and taking example of her resilience, which was very inspiring for me. I think that was a really big additional layer of reinforcement of seeing my mom do it, seeing my mom defy the odds and continue unapologetically moving in her recovery, in her healing process. Been very inspirational to having that example from your own mother. So I think it's maybe those two, right? It's the resilience of my mother that's been a huge inspiration for me, and having applied it myself, through that young age, through that experience, and coming out of that, like, which, I think I felt that I was done with it 4 years later. And then even that, I was like, that was premature. It took more years for me to fully become myself. But whenever it was over, I came away with the confidence that, like, I can survive that, keep walking after that. I can do anything, right?
I'm 1,000,000 feet tall and bulletproof. I know the saying is 100 feet tall. No, I'm 1,000,000 feet tall and bulletproof. If being hit by a car didn't take me out, there's nothing outside of some catastrophic event that's going to stop me. I may have setbacks, but like I am eminently capable and I am powerful beyond my wildest dreams.
I think that confidence that, like, we are endowed with, having been through the hard challenge, the suffering, the trauma, and having overcome it, like, it just takes one example of that journey, and then you get to walk with this confidence for life. It
Yeah.
will propel you into so many other things. I like to joke, this car accident, which is so pivotal in my life, was both the worst thing that ever happened to me and the best thing that ever happened to me. Very much stand.
I've had people ask me if I could undo it. Would I? I don't think I would because I grew up in an abusive household. And so I had constructed this entire life around being the perfect person to be counter to what I had grown up in. And when you're raised in abuse, you hide everything because that's what you're conditioned to do. And so I had this very constructed life that was perfect from the outside, but in the inside was still very empty. I was doing things because I felt like that was what was expected of me, not because I felt like that was what served me. And so that was a big part of what fell apart after my accident was I couldn't maintain that facade any longer. And so I had to rebuild from the ground up. My brain no longer had the ability to sustain the facade that I had maintained. And so what it did was it took me down to my knees and forced me to rebuild from the ground up in a much more authentic way. It's one of those things where I didn't have the mental capacity any longer to do anything but that. People are always like, oh, you're so authentic. I'm like, I can't be anything else. I no longer have the ability to be fake. And I'm so grateful for that because it feels so much better to live a life true to your own skin than it does to maintain a false front for other people's comfort.
For sure. It was the necessary reboot.
Yeah.
It couldn't have come in any other way.
No, and I'm so grateful for it. It was a really hard way to get here, but I'm so grateful to be here.
Same here.
So I've loved our talk. If you had one thought to leave the listeners with, what would it be?
I think anything can make you stronger if you let it. That's the key element. You have to let it and you have to harness it too. Some of the worst things that happen to you can be some of the best things if you let them make you stronger, if you let them kind of shape you and give you leverage and velocity.
I could not agree more. It's trendy right now to think of the analogy of being pulled back before you're released to let go. You'll see people with arrows tattooed on them all over the place. But as trendy as it is, I love that analogy because it's so true. That tension and the pulling back, and lots of times that pullback feels so uncomfortable and you're like, oh my God, like this is so suffocating. And then it finally releases and you move forward way further than you probably ever would have imagined you're capable of. I love that. That is a great ending thought.
I'm going to steal that. I like that one a lot.
Thank you, Kira. It's not often that I come across someone who's had a car accident that has had a similar catharsis from it. Mine was very cathartic. It got rid of all of the crap that didn't serve me, and it's brought me to a very different version of myself. I'm glad that you've had a similar experience.
It's really cool to connect and to resonate on this very rare frequency. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Caroline's Adventure podcast. While you're here, subscribe to the show so you're the first to catch new episodes when they're released. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me today, please leave a 5-star rating. For links to social media and more content, visit the description for this episode or go to carolinesadventure.com. That's Caraline with 2 A's, adventure.com. purpose.Together.com.